Justin, it's been a crazy train couple of weeks, and the world as we know it has been interestingly weird. But I wanted to open up and bust right through on this one. 18, 19, 20 years ago, it's a long time ago. I had a case where, and I don't want to get lost in this particular case and the ugly of it. Infant child dies. So that's just putting that right on the table. And died of SIDS. And the owners of the apartment had been complaining to the landlord, the apartment itself, for a long time about mold. And about mold and about mold and about mold. And they brought in just a huge book of documented complaints. And I figured this is going to be a very big case, a very good case. And, you know, autopsy, SIDS, respiratory issue, it's an unfortunate thing. Hire the most expensive. Did I mention how many years ago this was? I spent every dime I had on the most expensive dadgum expert, because you've got to have an expert. And he'd written the book on mold. He was the I know his name, because you don't write a check that big and not remember that name. We're meeting and we're talking about some things, and he's early on in the case. And I said, so, we're talking about causation. Did mold cause
the SIDS?
The SIDS. Did mold cause the death? And he said, no. He goes, but that's what it's going to be in my report. And I was really challenged at this point in my young career. I'm hungry. This case seemed like it was going to be a bell ringer, we called them in that industry, in the personal injury industry. It was going to be a bell ringer. But I said, what do you mean? He goes, black mold, yellow mold, purple mold, gold mold. Mankind's been living around mold
for a long time.
Forever. Since Adam left the garden, there's been mold all around. He goes, does it cause allergies? No. Does it cause sickness? No. Does it cause SIDS? No. Children have been dying for a long period of time from that condition as well. So, however, the literature suggests, is how he put it.
There might be a connection.
Suggests that there may be a connection. I had to advise the clients to go elsewhere, somebody maybe more suitable. I could not pursue that case. And I don't know ultimately what happened with it, and I hope everything worked out fine. But it got me thinking about media madness. It got me thinking about propaganda. It got me thinking about what we're fed enough times to where we start to change the way we go about things. And so I use that experience to open the door to, you ask most people on the street, is black mold good or bad? They're going to tell you it's deadly, it's lethal, it's this, it's that. There's lead in the paint, there's this and that, wherever. And it's unfortunate that it makes it to where it's kind of like the Me Too movement. The Me Too movement got so tender that any little wind blew any different way, or somebody needed a little extra attention, that side of the scale got real heavy. And the side of the scale that really needed the attention, that really had an issue, somebody that was, sexually assaulted, or, inappropriately treated in the workplace or something like that for real, it just kind of got lost in the sea of all the accusations. So here we sit, in 2024, and I'm thinking, we talked about Obama. We talked about Trump. I can see so many similarities of the two. Obama talked about unification of the nation, and he talked, and he did it very well. He talked about all of these things. So does Trump. America first, America first, America first. And it is not too far off the messaging of Obama, really. Obama's actions were certainly not in that direction. They were more socialist in view. And that pernicious mold started to grow throughout our politics, and the aisles very quietly widened. They had a few things in common, and the left started embracing some of the rights, the historical right way of doing things. Hey, let's go to war. Okay, let's do this in military-industrial complex. What does all this have to do with mold, right? Well, it has to do with media. And I posed the question to you, and I did it again, and now I'm doing it again, the difference between the Obama administration or any administration prior Obama and prior, and the media. The media was definitely harsher on Bush than Obama. The media was very, very embracing of Obama. They embraced him everywhere he went. I mean, even Fox and, usually conservative places were carrying a ton of his stuff. I mean, it was pretty, the playing field seemed very welcoming to him. Trump, that's not been the case at all. Bush, it was not the case, really, W. Clinton got some flack, but if Clinton would have not gotten caught on a few things, he would have never gotten much flack. I don't even think Bush Sr. didn't get a whole lot of flack, and I think he deserved a whole lot, honestly. And he deserves some credit in some places too, much like all of them. So let's carry on. This media madness that we have going on now, what's a solution in your mind to, you've got CNN here, and you've got Fox here, and you're at the gym working out, and you're getting the same story with two completely different spins on it. What's our solution?
I mean, is there at this point? Like, I think I would love to be idealist and say that we're going to get some unbiased source that we can look to, that people are smart enough to go back to opening their books instead of opening their phones.
Right.
But I think that ship has sailed, honestly, as far as where your source materials are going to come from. I think we're just going to be, unless you're reading a nonfiction, fact-centered book, which is incredibly boring and nobody does it anymore, you're going to get a bias.
Yeah.
And that there's always been a color of opinion on anything that's written or anything that's reported, I think. But I think that there was some definite media, there was a standard that was held to media before to, like, you'd lose your job if you presented some kind of false story that ended up not being proved true. Like you'll hear old reporters that have gone through different media organizations back in the day, like these older guys, they really fact checked themselves because they did not want to get caught in reporting false narratives.
Because ultimately, even though they're reading a prompter, ultimately it was them.
And the maybe not our generation, but definitely the generation, so our parents' generation, the news was looked at as almost the Supreme Court, right? It was the unbiased, neutral way that they got their information and supposedly just reporting the story, not but then it became, with social media and trying to get eyes on your clicks or clicks on your story and eyes on your video, it became more of a production, right? It became more of a dance. It became more of a, what can I draw? And so I've got to feed these opinions, or I've got to sensationalize it with lights and music, that we lost sight of whether it's factual or not. And I think the media even knows that, and it's because they're not being held responsible. I mean, people are all the time spitting out stuff that is proved to be false, and they just write the next story. Like, it's nothing. So I don't know if
What
it's
a good point.
Going back to the standards of if you're a reporter,
Yeah.
that you're held to a standard.
Like what held them to that standard? What held Bill O'Reilly? Let's just throw it out there. Barbara Walters, probably different sides of the aisle.
Sure.
Those two. What was Joan Rivers? Interesting lady. But what held these people? I'm not sure we consider her a reporter, but she was entertaining and she seemed to tell the truth. Kathy Lee Gifford, the morning thingy that they did with Regis there. It appeared that those were just when I just said those names, it's like Macy's Day Parade. Like I thought it took me back to a place that doesn't exist now.
Yeah. Yeah, you didn't always know where people lied. I mean, there was definitely some of the people you're naming are more entertainment reporters, maybe. But even then,
I think Bill O'Reilly.
No, not Bill O'Reilly, but maybe the Joan
Beck
Rivers
Joan
and
Rivers,
some of that, or the Kathy Lee Giffords.
Right.
But even them, you didn't necessarily know automatically which way they leaned.
Well,
it was entertainment.
You've got the Stefanoff, the guy with the son.
What did he call? Oh,
the one that did the debate with Trump and Biden, I believe, is the son. George Stephanopoulos, something like that.
Trump called him Snuffleupagus or something like that.
So he should have probably, because I didn't like that debate. It was certainly very slanted. That said, though, his father is an icon, and kind of in a Cronkite type scenario, or a Dan Rathers, or some of these guys that many of them were left, many of them were right, but you never would know it.
Yeah, I mean, can't you remember the Dan Rather coming? I mean, he's the one that I would say is and even maybe he's a little bit old for me, but he was the guy that interrupted your sports game and said, "Hey, this is happening in the world," and you listened because you didn't. Right now, I don't know if there's a single person I can think of that if they interrupted my news, I'm not going, "Oh, where's this windbag going with stuff?" Right?
Yeah,
and that's a tough part that I think the media themselves have done that has nothing to do with, obviously, and that might be, again, we've talked about this, the social media influence, in the sense that they were the one source before, and now they have to compete with every guy that has a blog and every person that has a podcast.
Which we're trying. We're 100 subscribers away. 100 subscribers away from
some algorithm or something.
Some sort of big time. I don't know what the Sam we got coming on. But this has been brought to you by subscribe to the Dana Hogle Show. Subscribe to this thing because me and Westover love doing this.
That's right.
So to me, it's interesting. So we've got the border crisis. Always have had a border crisis. Hasn't been quite as leaky as it is right now in my lifetime. But, and we are in the industry. You're definitely in that frontline industry of immigration. I'm probably a secondary.
But you see it
right there because of the criminal component of it. So the Westover firm, immigration, and you're seeing it coming in a whole new way now. You're hearing asylum. I got some lady blowing me up like nobody's business. I did not send your way because she's been here for less than a year. Who she came with got picked up because he didn't go to his court date and he got picked up for whatever reason. I think it's a speeding ticket or something. And their money that they got from the government was all dried up. And she was calling on a friend's cell phone that had just crossed. And I don't know what to believe, what not to believe as far as the news anymore. But yeah, apparently they do get a cell phone.
A lot of, they're giving them, it's a way to monitor them instead of the ankle bracelet right now. It doesn't do anything else but let them call once a week, from what I understand, or there's no like smartphone components to it, but they can call a few numbers.
Well, she was calling me on one
and maybe
of her
they
buddies.
can call regular numbers. They just can't. It's not like
I don't know
internet based. But anyway, I've seen those.
And so but she was hysterical. But ever since she stepped foot in our country, she's been given. She was not employed. He was not employed. They both sought asylum. She's dancing on missing her asylum because she doesn't have any money to pay anybody or do anything. It's like, how many of these particular people are out there?
Oh, I have that conversation all the time, and I tell them, look, I feel bad for you. I'd love to do every case pro bono if they were real strong cases, and I will occasionally if it's a real strong case. But for the run-of-the-mill asylum case and claim that's going on, I tell people, look, the propaganda that's going on in your home countries is forcing you to come here, not forcing you to come here, but giving you the thought that it's a good idea to come here. But you guys don't come prepared. You don't come with any of the photos of your asylum claim. You don't come with any of the police reports, if they even existed. And you don't come with enough money to pay for an attorney because you don't understand that when you're applying for asylum, they're putting you in removal proceedings. And so it eventually comes to a court date. Right. And if you don't get your stuff in order within a year of filing or of entering the United States, you can't hire an attorney, and then you're basically going to get deported. So
my understanding, and this is kind of nuance in your world, but this is a general question. My understanding is asylum is a very, very high bar to clear. George, some guy that called me the other day, uncle died in, I think it was regular run-of-the-mill Sinaloa.
Cartel stuff.
Yeah, cartel stuff. Uncle died right in front of him, blah, 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 blah. For this reason, he's seeking asylum and this, that, and the other. And I speak to him a little bit. I mean, that's a very compelling story and all. But there's still a red flag in the back of my mind, which is, okay, this is probably something immigration has heard a lot of times over and denied most of the time. So on that fact pattern, because I'll drill back, I'll tell you a little bit more about the information I was able to gather. But on that right there, okay, I mean, how much?
Yeah, so the big thing that people don't understand is the violence is one part of it, right? The harm, the danger, that exists, and it exists in a lot of countries, but it definitely exists in Mexico and Central America. These people are not lying when they say that they live in a dangerous neighborhood, and I feel bad. It's a tough spot to be in, and I had a guy the other day showing me, he was crazy. He was literally on his phone filming all the narcos outside of his window of his house in his neighborhood.
Narcos are drug runners /
cartel guys with submachine guns, and one of them had a freaking grenade launcher, and they were firing at either opposing narcos or police or whatever else. It was 4 feet away. He was showing me this video.
He's right there. He's doing the news coverage.
Exactly. And he's like, look, this is in my neighborhood. And I told him, look, you're going to have a stronger case than others because the harm and the danger is imminent. You've got proof. A lot of people don't come with proof. But the problem is, even in his case, and that sounds like a really strong case, there's these connections and nexuses that you have to make on the legal side, which means that you have to show, first of all, that you're a member of a particular group, that the reason that you're in danger is because you're a member of this group. So, like, for example, in Venezuela right now, it's pretty easy, that part of it, because you say, hey, I'm a part of the opposing political party. The government is actively attacking, threatening, opposing political parties. They can show their membership on the list. Yeah. And I'm like, cool, that one's good. And then on top of that, you have to show that the government directly or indirectly is, because you're a member of this group, is harming you. So obviously directly, like Venezuela is great. The government itself is attacking you. On the Mexico side of thing, you have to make an indirect argument. So you have to say the narcos are attacking you because you're a member of this group, socially, politically, religiously, whatever else, and you've done police reports and the government doesn't care. And so they're indirectly harming you.
Which isn't the case in general.
In Mexico, it's hard because the Mexican government has taken... They are doing things, whether they're doing a good job, whether they're corrupt or not. That's arguments for neither here nor there. I mean, it is arguments, so I don't want to discount that. But it's not that they are actively ignoring it. And this opposing party of ours, so ICE, they present lots of documents saying, hey, the Mexican government's had all these programs implemented where the National Guard is coming in and trying to keep the peace, whether that's happening or not. And there are some cases that'll get approved, but that's the thing. It's not just I come from a dangerous neighborhood. Here's what's happened to my cousin. Because then I say, okay, why are you in danger because your cousin was killed? Well, I don't know, because I'm a member of the family. Okay, you're a member of the family. That's not a social group. I mean, it is, but it's not a recognized one by the government. It's not a protected one. And so is it because you all as members of the family are part
Against,
of something
blah, blah,
or
blah,
whatever, and
contrarian
and a lot of times that's where they fail.
Right.
We can't get that established group.
Or back to George, it just so happened to be 18 years ago that
The uncle got killed.
Gets off.
I hear that a lot.
It's just like, I know you have, and it's like, okay.
Yeah, and then you have to additionally show where that harm still exists.
Right.
And where that
Damn near impossible
danger
18 years
still
ago.
exists. Yeah, absolutely. And that I get all the time. I get that one on the most common one I get on that one is not the people that are recent arrivals, but there's a thing called a defensive asylum claim. So a lot of the people coming right now are making affirmative asylum claims, right? They're making the claim from the beginning. We have people who get caught, let's say, for a traffic ticket or whatever else. They have no other option because they don't have a wife or kids or anything. And even if they've been here 10, 15 years, so they do a defensive asylum claim, which is much harder. The standard's higher and there's different things. But that's their thing. It's like, well, I had my uncle, dad was killed 15 years ago. And I'm like, okay, get it. But how are we going to convince the judge that no changed circumstances have happened in your hometown for the last 15 years? You haven't even been there. And so, yeah, I mean,
you've been here holing up and in the shadows, like we've discussed.
Makes it hard.
So it's this hysterics, it's this moldy media that we've got now. So we just got off on a tangent there and talked about border, which is always a hot topic anyway. And so and it always has been, but right now it's really, 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 really hot. Meaning what's going to end up happening, in my opinion, is going to, it's already blown up in our face. So now the solution to it will also tick off a lot of folks and probably not tick off a lot of folks all at the same time. And where we've always been fighting the fight, it's going to look about the same there too. It's going to really have some heart-wrenching stories that come out of whatever the new policies are.
Yeah.
And there's going to be some really cool stories that come out of it too. So it's one of those things. It's like, daggum, here we go again, Westover. I don't know how much I'm ready for another Lely, but let's go. I mean, it is what it is, because for every heartbreak, there's, 5 or 10 great stories to go, yeah, okay, this is why we do what we do. But the media, back to that, and how we don't have the world stops for a Dan Rather report. During World War II, you had, frankly, the fireside chats by my least favorite president of all time, or at least one amongst them.
FDR.
But he definitely did keep the morale up of the nation in those fireside chats. Whether I agree with any of his policies whatsoever is neither here nor there. That part of things, it's kind of like George W. throwing that strike, a couple of months after 9/11 in the World Series in Yankee Stadium, and holding it together for the country and really doing a good job of doing that part of things. I felt like he did a very good job of leading our nation in a time of
yeah, he shined for a few months there. I wasn't in the country at the time, so I didn't get to see a lot of it.
He really did shine. He did shine. That said, okay. But the media, what to even believe now? I mean, we've got now a new presidential candidate on the Democratic ticket, and that's an interesting, I wonder how that's going to roll. But you hear all this, all that, all this, all that against her, and you hear the same, all this, all that, all this, all that for her. And you've got Trump that's kind of a known quantity by now. And I'm not going to say people have warmed up to him, but he's less surprising.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go with that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it is
less shocking. Less
he
surprising.
is who he is at this point.
Yeah, less surprising, less shocking.
You're not losing voters at this point because of the
And
things he says.
He can only pick them up at this point.
Yeah.
And so, the Democrats, if they look around, and those that are conservative or moderate, which is kind of where I land, those that kind of look at things that way, it's like, I like the country a bit better.
4 years ago.
Yeah, 4, 5, 6 years ago, this country was a country I recognized. I didn't, though, recognize the media. Now, what gives me some hope, and I want you to kind of jump in on this because you got kids about this age, and they're going to be this age here pretty quick. You got a couple in the hopper there, and so do I. I've noticed that these 18 to 25ers, general age group, I'm just going to go general age group there. It doesn't necessarily matter if it's 27, 30, or 16, okay? That piece is like less affected by the hysterics. It appears that they see so many things that they tend to kind of research their specific interests and really kind of stay isolated to those types of things. And they're opinionated in things that they know about. Mm-hmm. And they don't really discuss or don't really pop off on things that they don't know about. And I find this interesting, and it's such a young demographic. And I'm like, this is interesting. But the ones that are, let's say their age, let's say 25 to 40, that's scrambled eggs right there. Because those are those they've been brought up on wah wah whoopsie. They've been brought up on I'm cool because I'm cool, just because I am what I am. They've been brought up on that, and they have an opinion on everything. And so how many times you get people ripping on the millennials, which you just barely may have escaped that designation.
Barely, yeah.
Right? Paige, who's normally in here commentating, is the first year of the millennials, and they've taken a lot on the chin. I don't think rightfully so, honestly, but also in the same vein, I get why people complain about that particular generation as well. So I see it both sides, because I think there's some power in that generation. Usually it's developing. It's in development.
They have a chip on their shoulder a little bit. It's a weird thing. And I feel like it is that it's, we talked about this before, that our parents were this duty generation. Mm-hmm. Just kind of do what you're told. Like, this is your job, get it done, do what you're told. Yeah. You know, if your parents told you something, that's what you tended to believe, your political stance, whatever else. And it was after that World War II type of thing. We were so country, so duty oriented. And so our parents grew up that way. So they're not as heavily influenced by, social media or whatever else. Number one, because half of them aren't on it. Number two, they don't know how to use it. Number three, who are these whippersnappers that are talking, whatever type of situation, right? They're Dan Rathers. If they could find 60 Minutes, that's what they're watching. Then that's that next, then they're kind of us a little bit, we're kind of tweeners. And then that millennial generation, what I feel like they have this chip on their shoulder because they feel like a lot of them will say, like, I feel like I was lied to my whole life.
Yep.
I was given this information, and then social media taught me that information isn't always correct, or that this was happening in our parents' generation, or I can't believe mom would just do what dad asked, or didn't think for herself, or so they have almost this rebellious, like, stick it to the man attitude, and so they're heavily influenced.
So doesn't it remind you, if you look back at history, because you like history, but doesn't this take you back to the 70s, 60s, 70s, maybe 70s
maybe that free
era?
Generation?
Yeah, but there was a chip on that shoulder too. Sure. Even though they were gypsies in free love and they were pissy.
Yeah, no, I guess
they were angry
you're
folks.
Right, because they came out of, I guess they were the kids of the World War II generation that kind of maybe fought back against this. I think the difference there is that their information wasn't so readily available. Yeah. So maybe that generation, it was a little more short-lived.
I think it petered off quick because of the lack of, the lack of stoking the fire.
Yeah, exactly. And unfortunately, unfortunately or fortunately, whatever you feel about it, that millennial generation, like I said, it's almost an anger situation of, I didn't get enough information. I didn't, when I was raised, I wasn't raised with the right, I wasn't raised with all the information. I hear that all the time. Like, if I would have known this, if I would have taught this, and half the time it's garbage, but
Sure.
but it is their feeling of just being cheated.
I'll add to this.
And
I
then
think
the
you're
next
right.
generation, I think, has come out of that a little
Right.
bit, because all they've been introduced to is
That.
every information in the
Yeah.
world coming from all sides. And so they get inundated so much that they're almost immune to it, because they're just like, look,
Yeah,
I
at some point I gotta
whatever.
pick a lane.
I don't even know what is right or left. I think
Right.
half of them don't even know what's a right-leaning political thought and what's a left-leaning political
Right.
thought. It's just what comes across TikTok. And
Right. And so we talked to your son, Caden, and we're sitting there talking to him, and he would look at this thing and go, and have all this noise, and go, oh, that doesn't make sense. This makes sense. And he's right almost every time.
So it's coming back down
Right.
because they're used to, from the time they were 5 years old, they had an iPad in their hands.
Right.
And so, yeah.
But I thought that was cool watching that.
Yeah.
It's just kind of like, no, just very sincere in the approach and the thought process. And it just gives me an immense amount of hope.
I hope.
Because I have a few working here right now, and I'm seeing these animals in the wild going, I need to study these guys a little bit. But the media had it continued on, because the 80s was a fantastic decade of relative dominance as far as us on the world stage. Reagan, the wall coming down.
We got Russia to come down.
You had Rocky Balboa beating the Russian, and obviously that was big.
You had the Miracle on Ice. Yeah, good.
You had Miracle. Oh, the Miracle on Ice. That was
times.
big. Okay, you had to bring some reality into it. That actually happened, and that was great.
Yeah, it's just a good vibe as a country, right?
Yeah.
A little bit more unity.
Yeah, even though we dressed weird, it was a cool decade. And then it kind of bled into the 90s. The things didn't start turning a little bit odd till mid 90s, and they didn't immediately do so. But there's where I think the media started to formulate, but slowly. The old school journalism was still respected. You still had your Bill O'Reillys. You still had Glenn Beck's. You still had Barbara Walters. You still had some very and Dan Rathers was still around too.
Sure.
I mean, and Snuffleupagus, but the dad. You had quite a few. You had integrity in your journalism and in your news for many years after 95. But somewhere around the mass production of social media. Mass production. I don't even know what social media. Let's just call it that. It's just social media, and everybody eyeballs. I think you hit it right on the head, like eyeballs.
Yeah, because you're competing against so many. So it was the social media part, and also just the television market expanded. I mean, before it was just ABC, CBS,
Couple
whatever,
channels.
NBC News. You got a CNN, probably was the first one to come around, which was kind of the all 24-hour news cycle. But then you had your competing, and I don't know that it was automatically leaning one direction or another. Obviously evolved that way because they had to compete against each other. Whether Fox News wanted to be the conservative wing, but they needed something to counterbalance.
Right.
CNN or MSNBC or whatever else. And then it started to perpetuate.
So I just think this mold that we've allowed is what we talked about last week: influence and money. Influence, money. It's both of them here in our country.
Sure.
That we've got to kind of follow and see. And so I figure the solution for all this, the mold solution, when the mold expert told me all about
what does and what doesn't
what it does,
affect.
what it doesn't do, and how very innocuous it is, and it's been made to be the monster of all monsters, kind of like COVID.
Yeah.
Once that happened, it kind of opened. I was thinking about it the other day, and I thought, I remember that, and I remember thinking, oh my gosh, okay, that's what's happening now. In every corner we can say, I mean, the protesters of Hamas or the pro-Palestine, we see a lot about that on the news. But how much is it really going on when I'm driving to and from work and picking kids up from school or going to Little League games or basketball games or something? I don't see any of it.
Yeah.
We had a bloomin' attempted assassination 2 weeks ago, and you can't find it on Google. You can't find it on Google. I mean, you have to like search specifically, and it's on page like 11.
Yeah, that story disappeared fast. I don't know if it'll heat back up when we get into like heavy debate season or whatever else. I have no idea. But
do you remember? Okay, you might not. Okay, that's fine. But you do remember Clinton.
Sure.
And the scandal that went on there. Lights were on at that point. I mean, that was on every news station all the time. Okay, that was a scandal in the White House with an intern. Mm-hmm. Okay, which is distasteful. It's not an assassination attempt.
Yeah.
I was 6, 7 years old when Reagan was shot. I remember it. I remember it like vividly. And that was the 3 stations that we had available to us in newspapers, and I was usually climbing through those for the funnies, or to make something to a bad out of it or something that you do with newspapers. You did a lot of stuff with newspapers back in the day, but nonetheless, I knew about it. It was like an assassination attempt is like a slap in the face for a previous president or for anybody really of any type of standing. That's scary stuff. And the fact that this dude rose up after being shot at, not being totally, just knee-jerk, really, rose up and just kind of had a very memorable moment to see, a very moving moment. Like, I don't care which side you're on. He means what he's trying to do.
Yeah.
He's in. Whatever in means, he is in. And so it's like, dang. Okay, wait. Now we're talking about Kamala, whatever we call her, Miss Harris. I know how to pronounce that part. We're talking about her now, like nonstop. That's the news cycle. I don't, and it for good or bad, like slander and smudge and smear, or positive. It's nothing in between. And so we've got all of these things, and people like your son and mine, actually, and these 2 boys I get to study in the wild too. It's like they're unaffected by all this malarkey, and they're really focused in on, hey, look at this. That's cool. That part is cool. Oh, okay. They're making like educated decisions on whatever they might know.
And you're right. It does stick with that part of it. It's because they have so much access, so much information. They do pick and choose what they care about. And so it's interesting that I think, 20 years ago, if the Dan Rathers were reporting on the assassination, that's your news cycle for the next 6 months until there's a trial and whatever else. In this,
right, OJ.
Yeah, in this type of climate, it disappears so fast because there's so much coming down the pipeline.
Yeah, there's something else tomorrow.
Something else. And that's the same thing with, that's sad. It's the same thing with anything, though. Like one major controversial statement makes the news for the day, and then it's gone the next day. Right.
So. It's like Don Henley saying about that in the early 80s, dirty laundry. Yeah. We brought that up on this. Dirty laundry. It's just let's give them the plane crash story real quick, and then
it's because this generation
is on to the next one.
Like everything's just short, right? Everything's a TikTok video of 30 seconds long. So that's like their attention span right now. And so for us, watching the Nuremberg trials or something like that for 6 months may have been fascinating because that was the story.
It was fascinating.
Right? But not that either of us were alive during that time.
No, we weren't, but there's a documentary on it
even
that
looking
I actually
back
got
and
roped
watch.
into.
Sure, absolutely. These guys, if it's not 30-second clip there, they can learn all the information in a minute and a half. Then move on to they just move on to the next thing.
Right. This is the next one, on to the next one, on to the next one. So you hit it on the head. I think you hit it out of the park. I didn't think of it as clearly and perfectly put as you put it. It's the eyeballs. It's the quick. It's the fast. It's the fast hits. The fast hits.
That's how they make their money. Like
it almost reminds me of how they eat. How people eat now.
Yeah, quick, fast, and get in and out. Yeah, there's no sitting down.
It's how they live now.
It's got its advantages. one thing that was, if COVID brought us, was a 3-week period of when it was first on and we were all segregated, of being able to sit down at a dinner and talk to our kids and whatever else. There's some value in that, and I wish that there was a balance to it, and we're all trying to figure that out.
Instead of forgetting all about that for a minute and then on to real life again.
But the ship's kind of already sailed on that sense. We can do our best as parents, as influencers or whatever else. I don't mean social media influencers.
I understand. Although
I got to be careful with that word now.
Well, why not?
Teachers, coaches, whatever it
there.
is. I mean, that word's changed its meaning now. Yeah. But to reel it in and put the phones down, and we do the best at our house to try and plug them in at night and whatever else. But yeah, our kids are so short-sighted on what interests them that
I'm not going to let go of this mold thing. The media is mold, and it's the next thing, the next thing, the next thing, the next thing, like you're saying. And it's on us. It's on us to
stop everyone and say, concentrate and pay attention.
Right. Use a little bit of common sense. Use a little bit of tempo. Breathe deep and say, okay, I'm going to vote for this county recorder because I'm going to vote for this person because, or I don't know anything about county recorders, and that's okay. Ask someone that you trust and that you have that you birds of a feather flock together. Ask somebody that you know and trust. Hey, what's a recorder that might know? Mm-hmm. If it matters to you, and if not, leave it blank. It may not matter to a lot of folks. The corporation commission czar, whatever we're voting on there. Well, how much good and bad can a corporation commission do?
I think that's especially, it's funny. I mean, my mother-in-law will text me every once in a while when it's election season and ask me opinions on judges, and I know. Yeah,
I get that all the time.
I know 0% of them usually. And there's maybe
I'll give you my handout.
Yeah, and you would know maybe more than me on that because I'm on the federal side. But good for her. Good for her for reaching out and thought, oh, this guy's in this industry. Maybe he knows, or we'll have political conversations, and she'll be genuinely interested. And she's her neighbor's a lobbyist, and he has his opinions, and she seems to really hold him in high regard, and that's great. I don't know. Yeah, you're right. She would actually care what a corporation commissioner does. My kid, my 18-year-old, if I was asking him, hey, you're about to vote, here's the corporation commissioner. He's like, what the hell does that do?
Right.
And so I don't care. George.
Right. George looks good.
And
I like George's name better than.
And maybe it's up to us to sit him down and again, put your phone down, listen to what this does,
or pick your phone up and look it up.
Or and then. Yeah, and Caden's, when we were talking, he's been a topic of conversation here. He's a lot more read for as an 18-year-old than most are. He likes, he literally will come into the house and say, look what book I found on 1960s weapons or whatever it is that he's interested in at the time.
Interesting.
And so he likes that stuff. He's at my office and he constantly has his headphones, but he's not listening to music. He's listening to audiobooks and podcasts and whatever else. So he may be better than my 16-year-old who, if I asked him any political question, such a kind-hearted kid would have a totally different answer. So each is different. Caden's a little bit of a unicorn when it comes to that stuff. So judging him and putting him in the generation that he's in may be a little bit of a misnomer. So I'm glad that you appreciated what he does.
I appreciated what he brought. I did. I like the way, and I've seen semblances of what he does and how he moves.
And good. I hope you do.
In the age group that he represents.
Because my 16, 14, and 13-year-old are exact opposite.
We'll see what happens with them, though. Yeah. Because mine are too right now. I got the twin 13s, actually the trip 13s. And we've got a very intriguing 16-year-old, and we're going to see, because that the hysteria associated with the eyeballs, with the influence, and I can go on forever on this one, and I don't want to. I just want people to think for themselves, to kind of come to themselves, because when I said that's how they eat, that's how they breathe, that's how they move, that's what they're representing right now. It's clutter.
Do you know what's funny, though, on that generation, my 14 and 13-year-old? So and this is exactly on topic. So number one, all I hear from them is that's boring or that sounds boring. So that's again, that whole, it needs to be 30 seconds.
So they're voting for Trump.
Minute and a half. But here's the crazy part. So this was when my kid was, so my youngest is 13. This would have been last election cycle. So 9 years old. And he was in the car with his buddy and I was on our way to a basketball tournament and we had about a 45-minute drive to Avondale. And they were word for word repeating political ads that they had seen as 9-year-olds, like Mark Kelly's a da-da-da-da-da-da-da, and like word for word the ad. And I'm like, where? And it's because on their YouTube videos,
their little shorts are getting...
They were getting ads that were popping up constantly. And so they were memorizing them. And I thought, there's your media influence right now that's subconsciously...
It's like the Marlboros.
So it works. Like
it's like the cigarettes advertising to that high
We're so
eye level.
used to ignoring commercials, us. But these kids, like they were like literally, and they were laughing so hard. And I recorded them. I'll have to show it to you one time.
That'd be awesome.
It's a dark car, but they are repeating word for word these political ads, both of them. And they thought it was hilarious. And then they'd ask me questions about it, but they were just more, they knew the ads.
Right.
And
they were just excited about knowing the ads. It's interesting because
but as
way
a
back
9-year-old,
when,
they're getting
right,
this.
9 years old, 6 years old, 5 years old, check this out. The reason why you remember the tobacco big lawsuits, and it was the way that they were advertising. And they were advertising at eye level and making it look cool.
Yeah.
So all the TV ads and all the handsome people, the James Deans of the world, the Marilyn Monroes and all that jazz, and they all died just magically wonderful and not strung out or jacked up at all. James Dean may be a little different. He went up and he was too young to really screw it up yet. Plenty of them have after. Let's go River Phoenix and all that jazz. So these individuals that are cool because they smoke, and now you can't, find anybody that's cool because they smoke.
Yeah.
But tobacco just so happens to be probably more prevalent now than it ever has been because you can just vape it straight. And so it's like, okay, this is interesting how things have changed.
Cycled, yeah.
Same old situation, just different. But the cigarette companies, the manufacturers, or whatever we want to call that, the big tobacco, paid billions of dollars. Still does.
Dude, I got a family member that he's loaded. He's a lawyer that represents big tobacco companies. That's all he does.
So we need to get him in here. So anyway, we need to get him in here. How cool would that be? We could put a bag over his head if he doesn't want to be recognized.
I'm sure he loses most of his cases, but they're still fighting it.
They're still fighting him.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Their advertising were at eye level to children. And they would specifically put the cigarettes and even the branding of the cigarettes in cartoons. If anybody's seen a Bugs Bunny,
my kids still think it's funny to buy candy cigarettes. Right. Remember that was like legit. That
was big time.
Candy cigarettes.
You
thought it was cool.
You were a little bit edgy when I was that age. When I was young enough to do those types of things, in grade school, that was still kind of edgy to do that. But
now it's like a novelty. It's just like a joke.
Right. But we'd buy the pack, and there's bubble gum in them, and blah blah blah. But so it's so interesting to me to have that as an example of the hysterics or what they're doing on these cartoons, on these, Nickelodeon got caught with their hands in a pickle jar with something that had to do with trans something or other, not a week or three ago, and now that's out of the news cycle. And you've got I wonder how long it's going to take for the Olympics that threw up their
Last Supper stuff.
That Last Supper, something that's been done the same-ish way for however long the Olympics have been going on, which is a long, bloody, historical time. And that is a historical piece, and then they just bungled that real good. Leave it to France. Judas Stage Priest. Anyway.
They like to push it.
Dadgum, why would they do that one?
I have no idea.
That was a bad move, but is it off the cycle now?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure it will be 2 or 3 days from now.
Sure. It's got to be. It's everything's so fleeting. And it's just what I want to kind of go back to is a Chris Ledoux song, which, okay, I'm a hick from here, and I know you're a little bit more hip than I am by far. Jesse Skool, just so everybody out there knows.
I know Chris Ledoux. I don't know if I know any of his music, but I know.
I'll send you some.
I had a buddy that he's local, right? He's up north, Arizona.
Ledoux is north now.
Payson or something?
No, he's north.
No, meaning, isn't he from northern Arizona? Something like that? Oh, no, he's not.
No, but he's from the west.
Okay.
But anyway, Ledoux sings a song called Slow Down. Man in the Mirror, Slow Down. And I just feel like that's the advice of the day. From what you were saying, as far as the hysterics, the social media put everything on rapid fire, everything on now. And yeah, our kids are definitely growing up in this, and they're developing walls, and they're either getting sucked on in, Angie Baby style. Boy, am I just quoting all sorts of old school songs. There's 3 of our subscribers that are going to follow this. That's Helen Reddy, so everybody knows. Angie Baby, look it up. It's a good song. Kind of creepy.
And here's my last thought on it, just to tie it up. So I follow there's this neighborhood Facebook group called Go Gilbert. It's pure entertainment for me. I don't know if it's okay. So it's great. It's a community page that people share stuff about, and it could be anything, right? It could be campaigning, or it could be, hey, my neighbor's mean to me, what do I do? Or, hey, come over here, this is a great restaurant. It's got all kinds of stuff. But I first followed it because of there was a basketball thing where some tryouts were held, and some guy accused one of the coaches of being biased, and so I was entertainment to watch all these parents come on and talk about it. So that's why I first joined it, and now it's just my source of entertainment. Like it's hilarious. But one of the things that is so fascinating to me is, so a guy on there is famous for putting the like joke scenarios on there, and I know he's just gaslighting people just to see the reactions. Right. So he's the other day, kind of, but he does it as a joke type of thing, and most people get it. But the other day he posts something about how, I don't even remember, it's a strip club in Chandler, Sonny's.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, never been there, don't know anything about it. And even me, I got caught into it going, I don't know what this was, because he kind of presented it like it was like a real establishment, and I guess it is. But he was like, hey, somebody left their wallet at Sonny's. Guy's name is Mike. I paid your tab, just so you know. And, so it was this joke thing that he was, throwing out on there. And obviously, if it was Mike, it was a buddy of his. If it wasn't Mike, it didn't even exist. But he was saying how he did this good deed and whatever else. And there were so many people that popped on and said, good deeds should not be publicized. Like, you should just do it and not have to come on here to Facebook and tell. And then there's all these people going on, you're missing the joke, you're missing the joke. But it kept coming. And so it's that media. What I was fascinated about is that this is the social media thing, right? You see it, you have no context to it. You don't look into it, and you immediately react with vitriol and hatred. Like, You're the worst, bud. You should have just taken his wallet back instead of told the whole world that you paid his bill. And people were like, what he did was good. Like, let's say it wasn't even a joke. He paid a guy's tab at a bar. Right. And, if you want to say into yourself in your head, hey, why do you got to publish that on Facebook? Okay. Great. But they were coming on like more hating on him for going on Facebook to tell everybody that he'd paid this tab, totally missing the joke. But it was just this complete immediate.
So when you lead with
emotional reaction where they get these 30-second, I mean, it was literally a sentence this long made for a joke, but it kept coming. Like, it was not just one comment and then people correct. It was every 8th comment was this, and then 40 people correcting him. Bro, you're missing the point. And then some of those people still fighting back until they finally got it. Oh, this guy's joking around and I look like an a-hole. And some of them wouldn't even back off on it because at that point they're emotionally convicted.
You're going. You're Jimmy Fallon now.
And this is the thing that I was just like, this is where we're at right now.
You are all in.
30 seconds, emotionally react, form your opinion, and then hate everybody or just destroy everybody when you have zero ability and knowledge and fact pattern and context. And
I just feel like people at this juncture right now, normal, everyday, red-blooded Americans that are on Go Gilbert and let's just use that as a microcosm.
And that
of
generation's
the whole thing.
probably that exact one. It's probably
Right.
18 to 65, right?
Right.
It's everyone.
Everybody, right.
And they're different reactions.
I just feel like there's a beat down that's happened in the country wherein the nuances and the policies and the procedures and the things that normally we would be concerned about, normally we would be looking and straining out and studying out to see, okay, I'm going to vote for this person or that person for these reasons. I think now it's just I'm voting for somebody different because it sucks right now. And so we've got that emotional
and we're seeing
shift.
that, to tie that
and
up.
You and I
Scott Giles in Mesa
right.
yesterday, right? You saw that. He came out and said, country before party, and more his vote is not for Kamala Harris, but rather against Trump. And we're seeing that more than we've ever seen before.
Right. And it's kind of interesting, and it's kind of what would get more eyeballs than that in Mesa?
Yeah.
Like what literally could get more eyeballs? So how sincere is it? How isn't it? And bottom line is we're all just mucking through this life here, trying to figure it out and trying to have some fun along the way and grow a little and live our best selves and live our best life. And right now it's gotten to the point where during COVID, if COVID didn't hit, we wouldn't be having a Kamala Trump discussion right now. COVID did hit though. So we are. And so now after the 4 years we've had, which have been abysmal, now what? Well, we're probably going to vote for the opposite party. And that's what you and I are concerned about is, okay, that's fine. Vote your conscience, vote wherever you're going to go. But that pendulum swinging rapidly is what we really, either one of us want to see.
Yeah.
We want to see kind of that dangle a little bit in the middle to where all folks can kind of come together, or as many as we can get.
Yeah, I mean, it may not make
as many as
happy,
practical. To where this hysterics, this go hard about the joke of the Sonnies, which I've represented half of Leslie's coworkers there.
This is the first time I'd heard of it. I didn't even know it existed, but it obviously was a joke to most people in the community.
Look, it's the only East Valley. Oh, my dad's name's Sonny too. Okay. That's funny. It's Sonny's place. Whatever. It's a strip club in
Chandler.
It's
I
a
got.
strip club
And the
in
thing
Chandler.
is, so here's my point to it.
We're a criminal defense firm in the East Valley, so we obviously know about this because we've had quite a bit of dealings with this.
And that's totally my point is that I read it and I didn't have a clue I'm not from here, so Sonny's didn't ring a bell to me, but I didn't immediately go, oh, what a scumbag or a slime ball or whatever. Right. I kind of read into it and I was like, okay, what's going on here? And I'm reading comments. I'm going, okay, I'm getting it. This is okay. It's just that whole, so I'm just, maybe that's my analytical self is I'm not going to emotionally immediately react. I want to, what is this? What is he talking about? Oh, this is a joke. But it took me a minute or so to figure out that it was a joke, but I didn't immediately attack the bro.
So
because I emotionally saw it and went,
I like the way you roll, but why can't you need to drive the way you live? So, because once upon a time you told me how you drive, you get a little bit aggravated.
Oh, the traffic for sure, yeah.
And you get a little bit aggravated, and if somebody kind of cuts me off, I'm like, yeah. I mean, you've seen this, and it's like, yeah. Every once in a while, I might get worked up if it's extra stupid, but for the most part, you're not going to see me getting worked up.
I laugh because I'm trying. Because the other day on Higley, there's a lot of construction here, and guys are famous. You can see the arrow for construction going on like miles behind. And a guy pulls up, and he's in this right lane, which obviously lets him go way farther up. And I'm, stuck with everybody else. And I knew he was going to try to get over, and it happened to be right in front of me. And most of the guys are being jerks about it, right? They're doing this on purpose. And I had that assumption automatically. So whatever, I'm angrily letting him in. You got this, I'm in my stupid idiot. And then he rolls down the window and gives me like a wave. And it was an older guy that had really gotten stuck in that lane, didn't know where he was going. And then I kind of went,
right.
Like, it cost me 2 seconds.
Right.
And I need to react that way for the most, but even if they are being jerks. So yeah, I agree.
So you are working on that.
I'm trying.
It's that
it
we're taking
was a humbling experience where
we're taking that theory, the Westover driving theory, and we're going to put that into practice. Let's use the way you deal with Go Gilbert in the way that we live our lives. It's let me see what we got here. What we got here is a failure to communicate. Okay.
And that's the whole thing. Yeah. Slow down.
Yeah.
What are we looking at here?
Yeah.
Let's get our
bearings and let's go.
And then,
because I think we all have enough in between the ears to figure that on out.
And that's, if I'm going to give advice to that generation that we're talking about, that's it. And like whether we millennials or the younger group, that's where we're losing them a little bit is because it's so, whether it be the Me Too movement like you talked about before, it's just so emotional. Like they feel like they've got a champion, and half the time they're championing nothing. Like nobody's on their side, but they feel like there's an underdog that they've got to champion.
Well, let's leave it at this then. This slogan for this particular pod is going to be, let's have the old school. Oh, no, I don't like that.
Slow down?
Old school is the new school.
Okay. Old school's the new school.
Old school's new school. And we can even spell school,
with a K?
Yeah, with a K or something.
Or
old school.
Without the H?
Or slow down, Chris Ledoux. Or, be like Westover.
No, dude, I'm working on it.
I don't know. I like the way that you roll with the Go Gilbert. I'm going to start probably having to read this now.
It's pure entertainment. I've never once commented on it, but it is pure entertainment.
It's just so fun to.
Christy watches me. Are you reading that stupid Facebook page again?
Yep. All over it.
It's a great human study. It literally is.
I love it.
So
let's go. Old school's new school. Let's do this.